They thought he was just another loud stranger at the airport until he silenced the entire terminal with a single sentence. Los Angeles International Airport is no place for silence. It lives on the hum of engines, loudspeaker announcements, and the rustle of suitcases. Millions of people pass through it every month, but most are just faces in the flow, temporary silhouettes that no one notices. On this morning, however, one man broke this pattern in such a way that the entire atmosphere began to vibrate like a string. He burst into the terminal lounge with such energy as if the stadium was waiting for him right at the boarding gate. A bright red hoodie with a hood, shorts with a soccer team logo, thick-soled sneakers. Everything about him shouted, "I'm here!" But loudest of all was his voice, amplified by the stream on the phone he held in his outstretched hand. "Bro! Yo, look at this! Look at this line, man!" he shouted across the room, bringing the camera closer to his face. He danced on the spot, moving not to the beat of some music, but to the rhythm of his own expression. People looked around, some bewildered, some smiling. An elderly couple at the information desk whispered to each other, "What's going on?" "The Internet. Just the Internet in real life," my husband replied, adjusting his glasses. For him, it was content. For the rest of us, it was chaos. For security, a headache. He didn't look dangerous, but there was a certain unpredictability about him. Airports don't like unpredictability. He approached the first-class check-in line, raised his camera above his head, and began to take a look at the faces of the passengers. She mad, he tired, he's definitely got something illegal in that bag. "Bro, why you got a pillow in your hand?" One of the female employees noticed him and pressed her lips into a thin line. It was Anna, the front desk manager, pedantic, stern, with perfectly styled hair and a look that could stop a school bus with a single grunt of displeasure. She watched him, without moving. A classification was already forming in her head: noisy, infantile, narcissistic. Typical of the online era, where it was more important to be seen than heard. He, meanwhile, had already approached her counter. "Yo, you, ma'am, let me ask you something. How much for a jet to Ohio, right now?" Anna gave a barely perceptible sigh. "Do you have a ticket?" she asked on the machine, switching to English. "Do I need one if I am the ticket?" He theatrically clasped his hand to his chest. There was a real line accumulating behind him. Tired people, delays, transfers. But now all the attention was on him. He turned the camera toward Anna. "Chat, chat. Say hello to airport lady. She mad as hell. Look at her face." Anna looked directly into the lens. For the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't just an employee on a post. She felt like she was being filmed, but not as a character, as an enemy. "You're interfering with customer service, sir. Please go to another area," she said, her tone almost unchanged. He lowered the camera, looked at her, then back at the phone. "Chat, she told me to leave. Bro, I just wanted to ask a question. Look how they treat people here." He shook his head, nodded goodbye, and left, with the same animated expression he'd had when he'd entered. It was as if everything had gone according to plan. Anna, on the other hand, felt a shiver in her knees, but she didn't allow herself to show it. She didn't know who he was, and even if she did know, she'd still do the same thing. Probably. A colleague with a clipboard passed by with a glimpse. "You seriously didn't recognize him?" "It's Speed. I show Speed." "Speed?" she interjected. "It has more subscribers than the TV stations. It was a live broadcast. Millions of people were watching." Anna felt her pulse begin to press in her temples. She didn't know exactly what had happened, but her intuition told her it was just beginning. I Show Speed disappeared from Anna's sight for just a moment and reappeared, but not where she expected. He was no longer standing at the check-in desk, shouting into the camera or jumping over the waiting line. On the contrary, he was moving somehow confident, like he wasn't looking for attention anymore, as if everything he needed to do had already begun. He walked along the terminal as if he knew every point on the route. From time to time, he still held his phone, but now not for streaming, but simply as a map or navigation. His eyes scanned the signposts fluently, and soon he came to the area where the service passageways begin, the area where even unauthorized employees don't enter without a pass, an area where the cameras were recording 24 hours a day. Anna saw it through the glass partition and immediately tensed up. Is he really going to go in there? The thought came like a punch. The guard, noticing him, intercepted the movement and got in the way. But a second before he touched his walkie-talkie, two men in black suits with Skyfly badges approached Speed's side. They said something to the guard, briefly, audibly, and he backed away. Didn't argue, didn't elaborate, just stepped back. Anna felt as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the air. It was as if something was wrong with her body, a slight dizziness, pressure in her chest, dryness in her throat. She shifted her gaze to the scoreboard at the end of the hall. It had just updated. Welcome, iShow Speed. Exclusive guest arrival. Gate 12. Are you kidding me? She whispered, unable to contain herself. She looked at the passengers, and a change was already playing on their faces. Some were recognizing Speed. Some were starting to type on their phones. Some were turning their cameras toward the second-level balcony where he now appeared. He was standing there, as if at the center of the stage. The camera was in his hand again. He wasn't speaking. He just looked up at the terminal above, slowly, circling it with his gaze, stopping on it, and suddenly he picked up the phone and pointed it straight in Anna's direction. Everything inside her clenched. Please, no, she whispered with just her lips. Her face appeared on the phone screen, clear, tired, withdrawn. Chat, do y'all remember her? Speed's voice was quiet, but the microphone picked up every letter. Yeah, that's her. That's the one. He shifted the camera back to himself, smiled broadly, and said, But it's cool. Sometimes people just need a little context. He turned off the stream. Anna stood like a stumbling block. Her throat was dry and her palms were sweating. She walked slowly to the terminal and leaned against the edge of the counter. Fragments flashed through her mind. She's in the way. She didn't know. She's just doing her job. But in each of those excuses was emptiness, weightlessness. At that moment, someone muttered behind her back, He didn't really do anything wrong. He was just noisy. But he was polite. Well, yes, someone answered. She started it first. And that was the worst part. Not that he'd turned out to be someone important. It was that maybe she really was wrong. Not by the book. It was human. A commercial ran on the big screen on the left. Speed was the central figure in it. He entered the airplane, played with children in the waiting room, hugged the stewardess and shouted, Let's fly! The Skyfly Airlines logo filled the screen. The slogan underneath read, Energy belongs everywhere. Anna felt how that slogan sounded like a rebuke, like a challenge, like a mirror. She slowly removed the badge and placed it on the table just for a little while, just to feel that she was still human, that she could make a decision, to make a mistake, or learn. And while the crowd below applauded and the kids reached for autographs, Anna wasn't looking at Speed. She was looking at her reflection in the glass of the reception desk. And for the first time all day, I asked myself a question. And who was I in that scene? Anna slowly sipped water from a plastic bottle and pretended to look at the data in the terminal system. In fact, her eyes kept returning to where the strange shouting guy had just been standing. Number, not a guy. Performance art. A walking performance. She could feel the irritation spilling inside, mixed with, what, anxiety? With some clammy premonition that something more than a simple incident with an uncomfortable passenger was beginning to swirl around her now. She sighed, deeply, almost noisily, and only then realized how tense she was. A colleague from a nearby counter, Alex, stepped closer and said quietly, You just blew off one of the most famous streamers in the world. It's just some kind of a joker, Anna said, loud, brash, and totally unprofessional. He made a deal with our airline, by the way, PR campaign. He was invited. Alex pointed to the clipboard. Check it out. A YouTube video was unveiled on the screen. Title: iShowSpeed lands in LAX, chaos and energy at its finest. There are also shots from soccer matches, clips with millions of likes, collaborations with brands, and even a fragment with participation in the advertising campaign of the airline, under the logo of which Anna worked today. She blinked, twice, then covered her mouth with her hand. Her breathing became ragged, but she gathered herself quickly. He shouted across the room, laughed in the customers' faces, broke the rules. What difference does it make who he is? She tried to defend her position. Alex shrugged. That's the point, you know. His breaking the rules is part of the show. His image. The airline doesn't just tolerate him, they use him. I'm the one who has to work with it. I have to settle the complaints later. Her voice has become harsh. If we're meeting clients by popularity instead of behavior now, I don't know where we're even working. He walked away, leaving her with her own thoughts. She sank down in her chair, clicked her mouse on the Nowhere document on the screen. The voices around her seemed to get farther away, muffled, distant, muffled. She opened a browser tab and typed in, iShowSpeed scandal. Her eyes ran over the headlines. iShowSpeed goes viral again. Love him or hate him, he dominates the room. Speed gets kicked out of event, then signs million-dollar deal. Public chaos, private contracts, genius or menace. There was a strange emotion on her face, a mixture of irritation, envy, and shame. Something in her was beginning to crumble. Not her reputation, no one knew anything yet. But within her, a structure of perception, the foundations, patterns. God, this is clowning, she muttered, as if trying to keep her footing. Anna? Came the voice of the department head. Conference room, right away. The whole team's gathering. A change of schedule. She rose. The usual readiness was reflected in her face. Only inside, instead of the usual clarity, there was a vague uncertainty, as if the rules she'd played by all her life had been quietly replaced last night. And the guy in the red hoodie, the one who was acting like a crazy person, is suddenly the centerpiece of a new game she doesn't know how to play. As she walked down the hallway, she suddenly felt like she was being watched. But not people, cameras, phones, or maybe millions of eyes online already watching her, judging, analyzing, and somewhere nearby, in the far corner of the hall, a sign appeared on a scoreboard. Welcome, iShowSpeed, exclusive guest arrival, Gate 12. The hum in the terminal intensified. The flow of people seemed to become denser, footsteps louder, suitcases rolling across the tiles like drums in a theater of tension. But in that noise, there was a new sound, higher, clearer, artificial, but commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our special guest, Daryl Watkins, also known as ShowSpeed. The voice coming from the ceiling speakers was extremely formal, professional, almost solemn. A few people stopped. Some turned around, but someone who heard the nickname raised his eyebrows. What? Really? He's here? Is that true? Speed at the airport? Anna, standing behind the counter with the paperwork for the evening flight to Chicago, flinched. Her hand froze over the keyboard. She felt the blood rush from her face, and her fingers suddenly felt cold. She slowly turned her head toward the scoreboard. It was burning brightly now, visible to everyone. Huge letters were displayed on the main screen. Skyfly exclusive guest, Daryl iShowSpeed Watkins. And just below that, Media Welcome Gate 12, time 11:30. The crowd began to move. People pulled out their cell phones. Passengers, who a moment ago had been nervous about delays, now rushed in one direction like a wave. "Mom, it's him! I saw his Ronaldo video!" screamed a teenage girl. "Did he really yell at the World Cup?" the man with glasses asked. "Was he the one who played with the fire hose on live TV?" giggled the woman. Anna felt trapped. A cascade of feelings triggered inside her. Shame, anxiety, confusion, and a stupid human desire to disappear, if only for a moment. At that moment, one of the airline's PR managers approached her, a tall man with an impeccably ironed suit and a clipboard in his hand. "Anna, you need to step away from the counter. We're preparing the space for the formal meeting." "Preparing? She didn't understand at first. Gate 12 will be open for press and filming. It's part of the Skyfly campaign. He is the face of our new brand. Please pass the flight to your colleague. Campaign? She interjected. The words didn't settle in her head. Yes, the PR manager nodded with a half smile. The contract was signed a week ago. He's our ambassador. The video is already on the air. It was at that moment that she saw the screen above the boarding gate. A commercial was running. Speed, joyful, shouting, «Let's fly, яй!» Зрение, обнимая экипаж, делая селфи с младенцем, летя в кабину, как ураган. The airline logo shone beneath it. Anna lowered her eyes. Her chest squeezed as if someone had placed a brick on her heart. Not because he'd turned out to be famous. It was because there was no malice in him. There was no desire for revenge. But she did. She judged. She filtered. She rejected. The voice from the loudspeaker came to life again. Please direct media to the designated area. No flash photography near boarding zones. Mr. Watkins will arrive shortly. Anna leaned her palms on the counter. She closed her eyes for a moment. I was wrong, but I can still understand it, she said faintly, as if to herself. And at that moment, there was a round of applause. Somewhere nearby, people started clapping. He was getting closer. The noise of applause intensified like a tidal wave rising from deep within the hall and filling every corner of the terminal. People lined the aisles, arms outstretched with their phones, hoping to catch a shot, take selfies, capture a piece of media magic. Anna stood a little apart, as if everything that was happening was not about her, like a spectator at a theatrical production, suddenly realizing that she herself was playing in the main stage. Only the script wasn't shown to her. And there he was. He didn't run out. He didn't barge in. He just, walked in. Quietly this time. Smoothly. In a restrained, almost regal silence. The red hoodie had been replaced by a dark jacket with the Skyfly logo. He wasn't holding the phone. He wasn't yelling. He just paced through the crowd as if it had been his space all along. His gaze crossed with the cameras, with the eyes of the children, with the flashes of light, and for a moment with Anna's eyes. He stopped. The crowd was buzzing, but a tense silence hung between them. We meet again, huh? He said quietly with a slight chuckle. Same place, different vibe. Anna felt her fingers tremble. It was as if all the electricity in her body had flowed into her heels. She'd expected sarcasm, mockery, disclosure, but there were none of those tones in his voice. Mr. Watkins, she began in a formal tone, as if she hoped the protocol would hide the guilt. Welcome. He tilted his head slightly to the side. You remember me now? Yes. Her voice was almost a whisper. I'm sorry about, yesterday. He raised his eyebrows. For being human. Don't worry. Happens to all of us. At that moment, an employee with a microphone and a tablet ran up, ready to do an interview for Skyfly's TikTok channel. But Speed raised his palm. Just give me a minute. And he turned to Anna again. I'm not mad. You thought I was just another loud guy with a camera, but sometimes that loud guy is the one with the keys. Anna nodded, and to her surprise, not out of fear, but out of recognition. I shouldn't have judged you. Without a name, without understanding. No right. He smiled, and at that moment something unexpected happened. He pulled a small rectangle from his inside pocket, not a business card, but a badge. It said, Skyfly Experience Host, Ann B. She didn't realize right away. We're looking for people who learn, not just know. The PR team said you're tough, but attentive, and you, listened. I pushed you away. Yeah, but then I did, and that was enough to start over. He winked. Even if you're an airport or a person. Anna took the name tag. It was real, weighty, with a QR code, and with her name on it. Is that, an offer? It's a challenge. The answer is up to you. With those words, he turned and walked forward, toward the press, toward the cameras, toward his role. But it was here, in this short conversation, that there were no roles. Just honesty. and an unexpected offer. Not just a job, an opportunity to become a better person. Anna watched him until he disappeared around the corner. She still held the badge in her hand, not as proof, but as a choice. There was still applause in the hall, but it sounded different to her. It was like a glimmer of something new. Anna was still standing still, looking at the name tag in her hand, when the scoreboard on the wall changed. Live now. I show Speed at Gate 12, Skyfly exclusive broadcast. Film crew members walked by her side. Cameras, tripods, and light panels appeared. Everything happened rapidly, as if the entire terminal had become a movie set in an instant. Somewhere behind her back came the voice of a PR director. In 2 minutes, we go live. All employees are off camera, except for authorized personnel. Where's Anna? She shuddered. It seemed even the signs on the wall were looking at her. Her name had come up at an inopportune moment. Or was it the most opportune? Here, she called out to herself before she could be frightened. That's great. Step up to the podium. Mr. Watkins has asked that you stand next to him. It's important to the concept. Sincerity, recognition, contrast. He insisted. Anna nodded, not because she was sure, but because something in her said, this is your test. Don't hide. When she stepped onto the makeshift stage, the platform in front of the boarding arch, the hall greeted her with a buzz. Someone clapped. Someone was whispering. Someone was probably already streaming what was happening. Her whole life up to that point seemed like a rehearsal now. Speed was already standing at the microphone. He winked, barely noticeable. The cameras turned on. The broadcast began. Ladies and gentlemen, he began with sudden restraint, I know I usually come in yelling, but today I want to speak calmly because this is not just about me. This is about us. Anna felt her whole body tense with excitement, and then he called her closer with a look, not an order, but an invitation. Yesterday, I met someone who thought I was just noise, just chaos, and maybe I was. But sometimes noise is what wakes people up. A pause. The crowd fell silent. That person is here today, and instead of turning away, she stayed. She listened. She learned. And for that, I respect her more than anyone who just smiled because they knew my name. Someone gasped. Someone started clapping. The cameras captured her face. Not scared. It was real. He gestured for her to say something. The microphone was brought closer. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but Anna took a step forward. I didn't know who he was, and maybe that's why I acted the way I did. No expectations, no filters. I didn't see the face. I saw the behavior, but I forgot that sometimes a person is more than their first impression, sometimes more than our fear. Her voice trembled, but her eyes remained steady. Today, I realized that it's not who you are in front of that matters. It's who you decide to be in return. Dead silence, and then applause, real applause, unscripted. People clapped not for the media image, but for the real moment. True vulnerability. Speed stepped closer and lowered the microphone. That's it? That's the realest thing you'll hear today? He turned to the camera crew. Cut it there. Let that be the message. The cameras froze. The operator waved his hand. The broadcast was over. You did it, he whispered, stepping away from the stage. And you did more than you could have imagined. Anna didn't answer. Her voice inside was busy. It was telling her one thing. You didn't just endure. You've changed. The next morning, the airport was back to its usual life. Flight announcements, business people with wheeled suitcases, panting families with children. And yet, the air was different. It was thick, filled with something that hovered between events and their aftermath. In the Skyfly conference room, behind glass walls overlooking the runway, employees were gathering, not on a schedule, by invitation, a personal invitation from the PR department, signed by Speed. If you've been there, come. If you weren't, all the more reason to come. This is not a briefing, it's a conversation. Anna was one of the first to enter. She was wearing a simple navy blue jacket, her hair gathered into a soft bun. No makeup, no protection. She felt like the aftermath of a thunderstorm, devastated but renewed. To her right was George from security. To her left, Julia from the bar. They glanced over at her, smiled slightly, but no one started the conversation first. In the center of the hall stood a round table. No stage, no microphones. Speed was already sitting there, in a tracksuit, barefoot. Yes, barefoot. There were soft mats on the floor. He didn't look like a guest, not like a star, like a man who'd come to talk. "Sit down. Whoever wants to. Whoever can. Just like in life," he said. When everyone had taken their seats, he was quiet for a long time, almost agonizingly long. "Yesterday you saw the show. Today I want us to see each other." He looked into everyone's eyes. "I grew up around screams. There was a lot of it. I screamed too. First in response, then to be heard, then to not be alone. But you know what I realized? The loudest person in the room is often the one who hasn't really been listened to in a long time." Pause. No one moved. Anna felt a pinch in her chest. The words penetrated not to her ears, but to her most vulnerable places. "I didn't come here to lecture. I'm here to say it's not your fault. None of it. Not even those who turned their backs. Even you, Anna. You didn't know who I was. That's more honest than smiling for the camera." He turned to her. Not a reproach, a confession. "But now we know each other, and that's the point. It's not about remembering names. It's about not forgetting feelings, not your own, not anyone else's." Silence again. And suddenly, a voice from the other end of the table. The young technician raised his hand, but then just spoke. "I wasn't on site. All I heard was some streamer made a circus again. I believed it. Didn't even check it out. I just jumped to a conclusion. And then I watched the broadcast. And I felt ashamed, because I did to you what we do to everyone who's different." Speed nodded. "Thank you, brother. This is the conversation, not who's right. It's what you get." A tension hung in the room, but not prickly. On the contrary, it was warm, like morning silence after a frank confession. "I want everyone to leave here today not with conclusions, but with questions, to ourselves, to others. And if you hear someone loud, don't close your eyes. Ask yourself, what if he's not yelling? What if he's calling?" Speed stood up. He stretched as if after a long sleep. "I've seen a lot of halls, stages, catwalks, but none of them have been as scary and honest as this one, because this is the only place where people don't look into the cameras. They look into each other's eyes." He went to the door. He said goodbye. "I'll see you around, maybe on the air, maybe at the airport, or maybe just in someone's mind when he decides to hear someone." And gone. No effects, no music, just gone. And there was a feeling in the room. Something important had begun, something that could not be stopped. Anna remained seated after Speed left. It was as if it was too early to exhale. People started to get up. Someone rustled papers. Someone reached for the door, but she didn't move. Her fingers trembled slightly, as if her body was lagging behind her consciousness. "Are you coming?" Julia, the one from the bar, asked, carefully packing her bag. Anna nodded, but did not answer at once. Then suddenly to herself, rose and turned to the table. "Can I have another minute?" she said, no longer embarrassed to be overheard. Several employees sat down again. Someone froze in the doorway. George even stopped mid-step. Anna stood at the very spot where Speed was sitting, took a deep breath. "Yeah, something real. Without the mask," she began, struggling to find the words. "I was wrong yesterday, not because I didn't recognize him, but because I let myself think I knew you, all of you, just by role, security guard, bartender, technician, customer, noisy, weird. Not like that." Her voice grew stronger with each phrase. "But I didn't see people. I saw noise. I fought the chaos without noticing that he carried the energy of change. Yes, I didn't have to know he was a star, but I did have to remember that he was human." Pause. Everyone was silent. Even the air seemed to grow quieter. I'm not apologizing because I got caught. I'm apologizing because I woke up." With those words, she took out of her pocket the very badge Speed had given her. Slowly, she placed it on the table. "I don't know if I deserve a second chance, but honestly, I want one, so that the next time I see not a badge, not a status, not a voice, but eyes." And then the unexpected happened. "You've already earned it," George said, "because you didn't run away." Julia nodded. "Because I stayed." Then one of the cleaners, the one who had never been called to a meeting, stepped forward, a small woman with hands chapped from the cleaning products. I often hear laughing, loudly, and I always thought it wasn't for me. But today, I was laughing on the inside, because for the first time, we were all seen, all of us. Anna looked at her and saw herself in her eyes, not her old self, the future. "Thank you," she said, barely audible. Suddenly, there was a round of applause in the hall. It wasn't deafening. It was real, not like a show, like saying goodbye to a mistake. Anna took a step away from the table, but not toward the exit. Toward Julia, toward George, toward the cleaning lady. She didn't know who she would be now, but she knew who she wanted to be with those who don't judge, who stay, who hear not only the loud voices, but also the silence between the words. 3.3, Choice and Opportunity. After the applause, there was a strange but not threatening silence. It was as if the very atmosphere in the room had rearranged itself. It was easier to breathe. People did not leave at once. They stood 2 by 2, 3 by 3, looking at each other as if something important had happened, not in speech, but in presence. They were here, and that meant something now. Anna was still sticking close to the cleaning lady when a young guy in a tech support uniform approached her. He seemed reluctant to speak, but made up his mind nonetheless. "I used to think change was something from above, from a superior, an order. But today I realized it starts with the one who dares to speak the truth first. Thank you for starting it." She barely smiled, but it was a different kind of smile, not a formal one, not a diplomatic one. It was the kind you get when someone says to you for the first time, "You mean something." At that moment, the door to the hall opened again. A man in a strict suit, whom Anna had not seen before, appeared. He was accompanied by the same PR manager who had been at Speed's meeting. They walked to the table where the badge still lay, and the man picked it up, looking at the inscription. "Anna, right?" he clarified, turning to her. "My name is Gavin Scott. I'm Skyfly's Chief Operating Officer for Customer Experience." Her throat was dry. All eyes turned to her again, but this time not with expectation of drama, but with attention. "We've seen everything, not just the live feed. We saw you stay, how you didn't leave, how you spoke honestly. No defense. We have an offer." Anna didn't move. Something froze inside. "We are launching a pilot project, a program to develop client ambassadors. We are looking for those who know what silence sounds like, who have heard discontent and learned to hear meaning. You'll be a good fit." She exhaled. "Me? After all this?" "Exactly because it was," he replied calmly. "We're not looking for perfect. We're looking for real ones." Anna felt a strange warmth being born inside, not euphoria, not pride, something deeper. It was as if the soul had finally found its weight. "If you accept," the PR manager added, "you can do more than just work. You'll be able to change, in us, in other terminals, in the system, in the culture." Silence. She looked at her co-workers, Julia, George, the cleaning woman. Everyone nodded. No pressure, just as support that didn't ask, "Are you ready?" She says, "We're here for you." Anna took the badge from the table. She looked at it for a second, then she put it on slowly. And, as if in response, someone clapped their hands. Then another, then the whole room. It was no longer an applause of farewell, it was an applause of choice, and she made it. No contracts were signed in the hall that day, no fanfare sounded. But it was still an event. Because, for the first time, Anna wasn't just working at the airport. She felt like she was helping people land, not just physically, but within themselves. A choice had been made, and it was a choice to be alive. The next morning came not with an alarm clock, but with an inner ringing. The very state when you wake up not from the sound, but from the feeling that today everything will be different. Anna arrived at the airport an hour earlier than usual, not because she was obliged to, because something inside demanded to be first, not for attention, not for status. It was about presence. She walked through the service entrance, said hello to the guards, and noticed for the first time that one of them had an R tattooed on his wrist. She hadn't noticed it before. Today, I did. The hall was still quiet. The lights came on in parts. But where it was dark, there was no fear. There was anticipation. Anna opened one of the customer areas, took the covers off the chairs, smoothed the mats, adjusted the magazine rack, dusted off the display screen. All of this had been done before by janitors or junior staff, but she wanted to touch this place differently, with her own hands, without a barrier. At some point, George came up. "You have the lunch shift today." "I know," Anna replied. "I wanted to just start earlier without making a fuss." He nodded, as if he understood more than she had said. Then he pulled a thermos from his pocket. "You didn't have coffee, I remember." She took the thermos and smiled. A real one, not like before. And for the first time, he smiled back, not as a guard, but as a person standing next to him. Later, she went up to the second floor, the area where VIP passengers usually stood. It was always cleaner, quieter, emptier. Her feet carried her to the place where he had stood the day before. Speed. That moment still lived inside her, not like meeting a celebrity. It was like meeting a mirror. At the balcony, she stopped. From below, the terminal was already waking up. Lights, footsteps, children crying, the mechanical voice of announcements. But here, at altitude, everything seemed different. And then she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She pulled out her phone, turned on the front camera. I looked into myself. For a long time, no filters, no expression. "Who are you now?" she whispered. "If you're not just an employee, not just a controller, not just an old version of yourself?" Suddenly, there were footsteps behind her. Light. Quick. She turned around and froze. Speed stood in the opening, again in his favorite hoodie, but no more cameras, no more noise. Alone. He was holding a paper cup with coffee and a notebook. "Yo, I figured you'd be here," he said and stepped closer. "You're back in town. For now. Just checking on the life of what we've started." He held out a notebook to her. "There's quotes in there, not mine. From people who were here yesterday, people who spoke. I wrote them down, so you don't forget." Anna unfolded it. The first inscription was in a child's hand. "If he's loud, it doesn't mean he's bad. It means he's trying to be heard." She closed the notebook and looked at him. "You changed us. No orders, no sanctions. I just gave my voice, and you chose to speak." They stood looking down at the terminal, and in that moment, the silence ceased to be a pause. It became a space in which to breathe, to think, to hear, of themselves and others. Anna knew the next step would be difficult, but she was no longer afraid, because now she wasn't just working at the airport. She was part of something that started with a look. And it went on. In the one who dared to hear. Anna walked back down to the waiting area, but the words from the notebook still echoed in her head. Not as text, like an echo that seemed to build into the rhythm of her steps. Each movement now felt not like a routine, but part of something bigger, an invisible current beneath the surface of the ordinary. At that moment, she noticed a girl in the lobby, at one of the benches, a very young girl, apparently a trainee, trying to deal with an aggressive passenger. He was gesticulating, his voice breaking. "I'm late. Nobody warned me. Where's the management? I'll complain." Anna approached without hesitation, calmly but confidently. The young woman looked at her gratefully, her shoulders slightly raised, as if an invisible weight had just been placed on them, and now it was slipping away. "Hello," Anna said, looking the man straight in the eye. "You are right to want to be heard. I'm listening." They weren't just words. They sounded different, without tension, without defense, but also without fear. The man fell silent. Then he exhaled sharply, and for the first time, he looked at her, not through her. He started in a different tone of voice. I'm worried. I have a daughter in another city. I can't be late. Anna nodded. Let's find a solution together. She turned to the intern. Thanks for hanging in there. It's okay. I'll help. The girl bowed faintly, and the passenger smiled, a real one, for the first time. Later, as Anna walked past the baggage claim counter, someone called out to her, I'm sorry, were you the one who performed I Show Speed yesterday? Anna turned around. A woman with a clipboard and a Skyfly HR badge was smiling at her. We've been watching the broadcast. You made a very strong gesture. We'd like to record a short video interview, informal, about the culture within, about change. I'm not sure I know how to speak nicely, said Anna, embarrassed. You don't have to do that. You have to tell the truth. It's the same phrase again, in a different form, already from other people. But each time it sounded like a chord, familiar, but more and more confident. Anna agreed, and an hour later she was already sitting in an empty meeting room in front of a small circle of lights and a camera. There was only one cameraman behind the camera. Just tell me what's changed, he said. She looked into the lens, inhaled, and began. I used to think airports were about schedules, control, precision. Now I think it's also about people. It's about how we greet each other, even for a minute, even in a hurry. There are days when you meet someone noisy, annoying, and you think, he's in the way. But sometimes it's that person who changes everything, because he's loud not because of ego. It's because silence once failed him. A pause. Her eyes moistened, but her voice remained steady. Speed changed a lot of things, but more importantly, it gave us a chance to change ourselves. And I've decided I'm going to listen, even the ones who yell, especially those who yell. The cameraman turned off the camera, but no one got up. It felt like something alive had happened in the room, not a filming, a revelation. Thank you, he said. It was better than the script. When Anna returned to the hall, it seemed brighter to her. It was as if the sky behind the glass ceiling had cleared, or maybe it was just that her eyes could see light where there had been only shadows. And as she walked to her counter, someone in the audience shouted, Anna, was that you on the air? That was awesome. She stopped, turned around, she smiled. Thank you. But I was just repeating what someone loud already said. And went on, but no longer just an employee. Voice, real, hearable. When the clock struck noon, the airport, as always, was in its usual rhythm. Voices, footsteps, announcements, everything seemed the same. But the atmosphere was different. It was as if the air itself had become a little lighter, the space a little softer, and people were more attentive. Anna stood at the counter and watched, not for the flow, at the nuances, the way one woman holds a suitcase closer to her, as if it holds not things, but memories, the way a teenager adjusts the collar of a grandmother who is worried, how a security guard, seemingly stern and sullen, hands a fallen ticket with a smile. At some point, Julia stopped nearby, coffee in hand and a strange expression on her face. Can you feel it? She asked, not looking in Anna's direction. Which is what? It's as if the room has become, not quieter, but more attentive. People began to hear not only the announcements, but also each other. Anna nodded. Yes, she could feel it. You know, Julia added, I used to think that speed was the key here. Throughput. Now I realize it's audibility, not audio. Emotional. That's when Speed walked by. He was without a camera, without an escort, just with headphones in his ears and a bottle of water. Anna dropped her gaze and didn't realize he was going to stop. Yo, ladies, he took off his earpiece. You're shining tonight. They both laughed, awkwardly, but warm. You have some kind of sixth sense, Julia said. You appear at moments when everything seems to be coming to a point. I'm just good at not missing important shots, he winked. And today, they're in silence. He walked on. But before he disappeared behind the glass archway, he turned around and shouted, "Anna, you have to keep talking, even if you think you've said it all." She nodded, not automatically, like a man entrusted with a fire not to put out, but to pass it on. Toward evening, an email arrived, Skyfly's internal newsletter. Subject, a story about how silence teaches you how to speak. Inside is a clipping from Anna's interview, a photo of the audience, comments from colleagues, director's signature, "Let this energy become the norm." Anna reread the letter several times, and then just closed the laptop, got up from the chair, and went to the hall. Not with a specific task in mind, but with a presence. She didn't know who to help first, who would approach, or who would just look at her and realize that she was not just an airport employee, but someone who could and wanted to hear. And when one child was suddenly lost from his parents and screamed in panic, it was Anna who got up from the bench first, sat down in front of him. She smiled. Hi, my name is Anna, and I can hear you." He sobbed, but froze. Then he nodded, and for the first time, he stopped screaming. The room was full, but not loud, because that's not what was being said here now. The next morning, the terminal began to wake up slowly. It was Saturday. Not such a busy day, but still with a familiar rhythm. However, there was a special feeling at the heart of the airport, like after a premiere, when the curtain is down, but the audience doesn't leave, because it is not the music that still sounds inside, but its echo. Anna entered through the service entrance at 6:15. She didn't usually work weekends, but this day was different. It didn't feel like a shift, more like a challenge, or a completion, or the beginning of something that had been ripening in the shadows for a long time and now demanded to come out into the light. An envelope met her at the information desk. No signature, just one word. "Thank you." Inside was a photograph taken the day before. She was squatting next to a boy who was no longer crying. Behind her is the crowd. The whole scene seems to be painted with light. On the back is a handwritten inscription, "He who knows how to hear the child will hear the world." Anna almost wept. She tucked the photo into her notebook and, without putting on her badge, headed for the departure area. Speed was already in the hall. He was standing at the huge window, his back to everyone staring out at the runway. He was wearing his usual sweatshirt, hood down. Next to him was a suitcase. One. Small. Light. She approached silently. He spotted her in the reflection of the glass. "You're on time, as always," he said. "Are you flying away?" Her voice sounded quieter than she'd expected. "Yeah, but not forever. It's just, don't get stuck. Even in good places. Otherwise you stop being part of the movement." He fell silent. For a few seconds they just stood, side by side, looking out into the misty morning. "You've cheated more than you think," he said, turning to her. "You think you were just listening, but you did the most important thing. You let others do the talking." "And you?" she asked. "What will you take with you from here?" He grinned. "I screamed for years because I was afraid of being forgotten. But here, for the first time, I didn't want to be the center of the frame. I just wanted to be in the frame with someone, and I was." He handed her a pendant on a black string. Simple, wooden, hand-carved. It has a wave and an ear on it, a symbol, obvious and profound at the same time. "It's my talisman, but you need it more, because you're the one who hears now." Anna took the pendant. It was warm, as if it still held his voice. "You'll still be here," she said, tucking the pendant into her pocket, "even if you leave." He nodded, picked up his suitcase. He walked slowly toward the exit. At the last moment, he turned around. "I started this story loud, but I want to end it with silence, because now I know if silence speaks, then someone is ready to hear it, and he's gone. Not on camera, not to applause, just walked away. But there was everything in the way he walked, and goodbye, and gratitude, and trust, and Anna stayed, in the center of the terminal, among the lights, the people, the voices, with a pendant in her hand, And with a realization, the silence is no longer empty. It speaks. It just needs to be heard. Anna was sitting on the bench by the window when Speed's flight disappeared from the scoreboard. Flight 317. Destination unknown. As if even the system refused to tie it to a location. As if people like this always flew not where but why. People around were doing their own thing. Someone was buying coffee. Someone was looking at their phone. Someone was hurriedly walking towards the landing. Everything was the same as always. But in this routine, there was a new sensation. It was as if someone invisible had shifted the perception settings. The contrast became brighter, the sound softer, and people's movements more meaningful. Anna took the pendant in the palm of her hand. Its surface was rough with light scratches. A real thing, not from a souvenir store. Made by someone who'd put meaning into it, not style. Julia came up from behind. "Did he fly away?" she asked without sitting down. Anna nodded. "No show, no last scene." "That's the magic of it," Julia said quietly. "Real heroes don't slam doors. They just walk away. And you realize it's quieter, but it's not empty." Anna looked out the window. The plane had already taken off. There was a thin streak left in the sky, the trace of a jet engine, but even that was beginning to dissolve. "Do you think he'll come back?" Julia asked. "Maybe, but no longer as a guest, more like a part of who we've become." And that's when she noticed a man standing at the terminal screen. He was wearing a baseball cap, a sweatshirt that said, "Listen first." He had his headphones in his hand but didn't put them on. Just stared at the screen like he was waiting for someone or something. Anna squinted her eyes. Something about his face was familiar, but not as in, "I know him," but as in, "I've felt him before." He turned suddenly and met her gaze. Didn't smile, no nod, just saw her, and that was enough. Julia looked at her. "What?" "It seems the lesson continues," Anna said. After a minute, an airline employee came over. He handed her a clipboard. "Anna, you've received an internal notification. You've been invited to conduct a training session, unofficial, just a meeting, with the new interns, customer support, tonight." Anna sighed, not from fatigue, from realization. "Do they think I'm ready?" The employee shrugged. "I don't think it's them thinking. You already know that." Anna stood up. The pendant was still in her hand. She looked at the hall, at the people, at the dynamics, at the pauses, the nuances, and she realized she was no longer looking for someone to talk to. She's waiting for someone who's ready to hear, because now she knows. Silence is not emptiness. It is an invitation to begin. That evening, the training room felt nothing like a classroom. The fluorescent lights were dimmed, the chairs arranged in a loose circle rather than stiff rows. No projectors, no slideshow, just people. Anna stood at the front, holding nothing but the wooden pendant Speed had given her. Her name badge was clipped to her belt instead of her chest. It wasn't a statement. It just felt right. She was here as herself, not just her title. Around her were 8 new recruits. Fresh faces, some nervous, some trying to look confident. One of them wore headphones around his neck. Another had a stress ball in his pocket he kept quietly squeezing. Real people, with real energy. Anna looked at them, not as trainees, but as possibilities. "I was asked to talk about communication," she began, "but today I don't want to talk. I want to listen." That made them pause. One girl with glasses raised her hand slowly. "Listen. To what? To what you notice, to what you fear, to what you hope will never happen at your post, and what you wish could happen every day." There was a silence, not heavy, but expectant. Anna didn't fill it. She let it breathe. Then slowly, they began to speak, one by one. A young man shared how afraid he was of being yelled at. A woman admitted she often overcompensated with fake cheerfulness because she didn't know how to respond to sadness. Another said she wished she could feel something more during her shifts than just waiting to clock out. Anna listened, really listened. She didn't take notes. She didn't interrupt. When the last person finished, she took a deep breath. "You've already passed the first test," she said. "You told the truth. Most people never get there. Then she walked to a whiteboard, picked up a marker, and wrote just one phrase. The loudest silence is the one we ignore. She turned around. You'll meet people in crisis, in confusion, in celebration. Some will be rude, some will cry, some will be silent. Don't react to the noise. Listen for what's behind it. One of the trainees asked, "But how do we not burn out?" Anna smiled. You don't carry their noise. You become the space where they can leave it. At the end of the session, no one clapped. No one needed to. They left quietly, deeply, as if each had been given something they didn't know they were missing. When Anna gathered her things, she found a sticky note on the whiteboard. A trainee had left it without a name. It read, "Thank you for reminding me that silence can be loud and full of meaning." She stood there, holding the note and the pendant, the last one in the room. Outside the terminal windows, night had fallen, but the space inside her, the one she used to protect with silence, now pulsed with a new kind of light. She didn't know where this would lead. She didn't need to. For the first time in her life, she wasn't trying to be heard. She was learning to hear, and that was more than enough.